Hey everyone, and welcome to Weight Loss Wednesday. I'm Chef AJ, the author of Unprocessed and the Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, which is now available in German. And this is where I answer your questions about healthy, permanent, and sustainable weight loss. And today's question was submitted by Kelly, who said she saw a social media post I made where I compared eating oatmeal and fruit for breakfast to eating cake. Thank you for that question, Kelly, because I love the opportunity to expound on that because it's really hard to say everything you know on a subject in a short social media post. I want to address this question in two ways. One, with my experience as somebody who actually was a pastry chef in a restaurant, and one is somebody who has a passion for interviewing all the wonderful plant-based doctors and dietitians, and they have some things to say on this subject as well that I think will make sense to you. But the first thing I want to say is if you are eating oatmeal and fruit for breakfast, congratulations, pat yourself on the back. That is a very, very healthy breakfast, especially if you're new to plant-based eating, and especially if you compare yourself to what everybody else in the United States is eating. However, there are some people like myself who are food addicts or food addicts in recovery for whom eating food in a more unprocessed state turns out to be a little bit more optimal. And so the post didn't actually say that, Kelly. It actually said, if you're somebody who is struggling with your weight, who is having food cravings or suffering from food addictions, then for you, eating oatmeal and fruit for breakfast is like eating cake. So let me address this first from the standpoint of somebody who was the executive pastry chef at a restaurant in Los Angeles for 5 years. Now, this restaurant wasn't even vegan, but all my desserts were. Only one of the recipes had flour. Everything was gluten-free, and I didn't use any SOS. I didn't use any refined sugar. Everything was sweetened with dates. I didn't use any oil, and I didn't use any salt. There was a recipe that I used to make quite a bit called outrageous brownies, and these brownies were made with dates and black beans, and they were very popular. I worked in the evenings when I had this job because I also had another job, and it was about 9 o'clock at night. I usually worked till about 11 or midnight, and I had a certain amount of orders I had to get done. And the black bean brownies, they called for 1.5 cups of oat flour. Now, we ground our own gluten-free oats at the restaurant into flour because it was more cost effective. And on that particular night, the Vitamix broke, the owner had left, and there was nothing I could do until the next day, which I did not want to come in because I had another job. So I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to put in the rolled oats as they are and hope for the best. Well, as luck would have it, the best happened. And here's a picture of what the brownies look like, and you can see that if you look at the edges, you aren't seeing pieces of rolled oats. And that's when I learned that rolled oats were more like flour than they were like the whole oat groat from which they came. So let me talk about where oats come from. They come from the whole intact grain called the oat groat. And this is what they look like. They're very much like rice. And when you eat them, you really have to chew them. They're very toothsome. They take a long time to cook, at least an hour. And if you take a grain, it doesn't just dissolve in your mouth. But if you take a rolled oat, now rolled oat is the third incarnation. In between this would be the steel cut oat, where they take the whole intact oat groat, cut it with a sharp blade 3 times so that this is smaller. And that takes about 40 minutes to cook. This takes about 60 minutes to cook. The middle, which I don't have, is 40. And as you know, if you've ever made rolled oats, you can cook them probably 5 minutes on the stove. So the rolled oat has been flattened, steamed, and flattened again. So it's very thin, like a piece of paper. And if you put it in your mouth, it actually will dissolve. Trust me, I've done this like a cough drop. It will dissolve, whereas this won't. Now, how is that important with baking? Well, my comment that eating oatmeal and fruit was like cake, I say that as a pastry chef because right here, I have something called a jam bar. This is a recipe from my next book, which I'm writing with Glenn Mercer, called Own Your Health, that will be out in the fall. And this recipe, jam bar, I don't know if you can see the lighting, it looks like a piece of cake. You can't see the oats. It has dissipated, it has dissolved, and this is now cake. And what is this made from? With the exception of the cinnamon, literally fruit and oats. So I see that all the time in my baking that I had called it that because that's how I feel about it. Maybe I should have said it was more like dessert than cake. But when I looked up the definition of cake in Merriam-Webster, there was a few definitions. And one of the definitions of cake was a sweet treat made from sugar and flour. And the reason I feel that way when it comes to people that are struggling with food addiction is because for them, they're looking for the healthiest way to to enjoy food without the actual flours and sugars. So the oat for them becomes like the flour. That's what kind of makes the cake-like quality in oats. You notice that when you make rolled oats, you really don't have to chew them. It almost can be like a pudding. And the very sweet fruit that's often accompanying it, which is often very ripe bananas, often dates, sometimes people are putting peanut butter or cocoa powder in their oats, that's the sugar. And so in my brain, as a pastry chef, sugar plus flour equals cake. Now, the thing is, whole grains like oats, for example, when they're eaten like this, which are not really raw because they've been flattened and steamed, they're almost 1,800 calories a pound. And a lot of people eat oats like this, that they call it muesli. So they're maybe splashing on some juice or some plant milk. When you cook them in water, then you lower the caloric density to about 365 calories a pound. So if you're going to eat oats, I totally recommend you cook them rather than eating them in this state. However, where weight loss is concerned, calorie density is very, very important. So a lot of people, when they're having their oats, they're cooking it in something that's a little bit more caloric than water, actually a lot, something like pineapple juice or orange juice. I see often apple juice, which is about 140 calories a cup. I don't see a lot of people eating just rolled oats cooked in water. And then, as I mentioned, they're adding a lot of other things to embellish it and make it even more calorically dense. The thing is, if you're trying to lose weight, you want to dilute the overall caloric density of your meals. And it doesn't mean that oats can't be part of a healthy meal or a healthy breakfast, but it's not that I'm anti-rolled oat, it's just that I am pro-oat growth for lots of reasons. Increased satiety, that's really important if you're trying to lose weight. You can tell the satiety of a food often by how much you have to chew it. And when you cook your delicious rolled oats in plant milk or juice, like I said, it becomes almost porridge or pudding, which is great for people that are having dental work or can't chew. You almost don't have to chew it. The oat groat is very toothsome. It's like eating rice, and you really have to chew it. That's often how you can ascertain the glycemic index of a food, by how much chewing it is. And these are much lower on the glycemic index than these, which for some people could be important. So for example, let me read something from this New York Times bestselling book called Mastering Diabetes. And I actually interviewed both Robbie and Cyrus on my YouTube channel, and they talked about this. And I believe it's about an hour and 10 minutes in each of the interviews where they talked about this. On page 222, it says, "We have found that eating oatmeal can cause unwanted blood glucose elevations in people living with a medium, high, or very high level of baseline insulin resistance. The presence of intact whole grains also delays the rate at which glucose enters your blood, which protects against unwanted blood glucose elevations when you're living with high levels of insulin resistance." So again, if you're somebody that's healthy, you're not worried about your weight, you don't have cravings or food addictions, knock yourself out with fruit and oats. It's a very, very healthy breakfast. But realize there's something called the hierarchy of grains, which you can get from Brenda Davis. I wanted to print it out, but I don't have any printer ink. But you can see that oats are a little bit closer to flour than they are to the intact whole grain. And for some people, that is going to be significant. So what do I recommend for breakfast? Well, first of all, what is breakfast? I looked it up. I even asked Alexa, and she said breakfast is the first meal of the day. That literally means break fast. And I know that in the United States, breakfast is generally something very sweet and very caffeinated. But if you look to the rest of the world, they eat savory breakfasts. And I like to tell you, people that are struggling with food addiction, which is generally sugar addiction, sugar and flour go through the same refining process as drugs and alcohol. And for those of us that are sensitive, and that is, depending on who you talk to, 17% of the population, or 1 in 7 people, we react differently in our brains, in our body, to these more processed foods. And so I recommend for these people, if you're having cravings, again, hey, I have been saying since day one, do the least restrictive program that you can do that will give you the results you want. So if it's working for you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you find that you're having sweet cravings throughout the day, maybe switch up your sweet breakfast, even if it's healthy fruit, for a more savory breakfast like they do in many parts of the world, many parts I've visited, like Asia, for example. And so if you want to have oats, why not have the whole oat groat and maybe have it in a savory way with shiitake mushrooms and garlic and greens? There are recipes in my book for that, recipes on YouTube actually for oat groats. I think if you try them, you'll find them really delicious. For me, for example, so breaking my fast, this is what I usually have. is I have sweet potatoes roasted. These are head and yams, about 1.5 pounds, and about a pound of broccoli. And that is my favorite meal. And my favorite meal is the one that I eat when I'm hungry. And my first meal, I'm always hungry because I've done my exercise. And realize that breakfast doesn't necessarily have to be at 6 or 7 a.m. unless you're actually hungry. You know, I want to give my clients an unfair advantage when it comes to weight loss because many people that are able to eat fruits and oats, they're not women. They've never been overweight. They've never struggled with food addiction. They're not menopausal or postmenopausal or perimenopausal. They're not hypothyroid. And for the population of people I work with, these savory breakfasts that include vegetables seem to work better for them in terms of stabilizing their blood sugar, dialing down their cravings, and facilitating weight loss. But again, I didn't mean to bash the beloved oats. They're very healthy, they're very nutritious, and if it's working for you, please keep doing it. You know, I've had clients who, until they changed their breakfast to more savory breakfast and more unprocessed breakfast with the intact grain, they really weren't able to break those weight loss plateaus. And even a few people that I've known in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program that came to me already slender, they were there for food addiction and for community. They felt like they weren't in solidarity with the program eating oatmeal and fruit for breakfast when everybody else was eating vegetables and some other starch like beans and greens. And they did an experiment for 3 weeks. And guess what? They lost 3 more pounds. So again, if it's something that doesn't resonate with you, don't try it. But hey, you may like it. And again, oatmeal and fruit is great. It's a healthy breakfast. If it works for you, keep doing it. But if you want an edge on breaking that weight loss plateau, fighting food cravings that occur later in the day, maybe consider trying more savory breakfasts that include vegetables. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Chef AJ, and I truly believe you can have both the health and the body that you deserve. And always remember, do the least restrictive program that you can do that will get you the results you want. Take care.